Let's give it just a few more minutes, Dr. Smith Stedman. I've done a little slide deck to kind of guide our thoughts through our discussion. And I really liked this chapter. It really made me think a lot about how important engagement data are. So I want to start out by just, when I was actively working in the school district, one of the things that I did, not exclusively, but I did a lot of, was work with schools whose students were struggling in their learning performance benchmarks. And so, we always want that silver bullet, and there isn't one, I'll tell you that right now. But again, you want to look for quick wins with teachers. So that builds their efficacy. So one of the first things that I always look at and work with principals on was, are your teachers teaching the state standards? Now, teachers will tell you, yes, they are. But my question is, well, how do you know? Particularly if you're a secondary principal. I mean, you may require teachers to do their lesson plans, but how do you really know what that state standard in physics or even physical science really means? And how do you know? So, hopefully that's the first thing. Are they teaching the state standards? How do you know? You're doing PLCs, the teachers are planning together. There's a content specialist working with them to make sure that they are interpreting and unpacking the standards correctly. And you're having them do lesson plans and you're
Dr.
checking.
Rabbits, you know what I was told? I was told by a leader early in my career as an administrator. Just always remember what gets monitored gets done.
Mm-hmm.
So, you've got to remember that what gets monitored gets done. If you don't monitor and you don't monitor with fidelity, that's where things begin to slip. That's where you get in trouble as an administrator when you fail to do that, or when you put too
Mm-hmm.
much on somebody else and don't do some of these things yourself.
Exactly. And I just feel like lesson plans, everybody should be doing lesson plans. Now, I'm not saying they need to be 25 pages, but teachers need to be using lesson plans that at least has the standard they're teaching and at least has what instructional practices or strategies they're using. And then the next thing I always focus on is, are teachers using those high impact instructional strategies, Marzano's high yield nine strategies, or Hattie's high effect size strategies. And if you're not familiar with those, hopefully by the time you finish this course, you will. And how do you know? How do you know if the teachers are doing that? Well, you're going to be in classrooms to know that. They can tell you what they're doing, but you got to see it in action.
All right, those walkthroughs are so, so important.
Hmm. And thirdly, I don't know, number two, are your students engaged in the tasks and assignments the teacher is using? And again, how do you know? So here starts looking at some of that engagement data that is covered in chapter 5. And then thirdly, and this one is probably there, no one is more important than the other. You got to have it all. What is the cognitive level of the tasks assigned and assignments the teacher is using? And again, how do you know? And one of the things that I would always encourage you to do is, look at those tasks when you're going into classrooms to see, and there's all kinds of dimensions of learning or even Bloom's taxonomy where you're looking, well, is this recall? Is it comprehension? Is it application? Is it synthesis? Whatever. Because our state tests, they're getting to that higher level. And a lot of times that may be the problem. It's not that they're not using high impact strategies. It just may be that the cognitive level of their tasks and assignments is not where it needs to be. in order for children to demonstrate their learning on those state assessments. So that's kind of my four things if I were working in a school and going to a school that I would want to see. And, you know, I would work in it in that order. I don't know if you saw that pop up. I'm sorry, that was the recording. So let's first of all, I want you to get into your chat box, and I would like for you to take a moment and, as a school leader, put your leadership hat on. Why is it important to gather engagement data? So just type an answer into your chat box. Dr. Stedman, can you see the chat
I
box?
can. Christy
Okay.
just put one up. Christy Funderburk. Disengaged students aren't learning. Ellie, to see which curriculum we need to better support in making more engagement for students. Katie Rogers, we must gather engagement data because we cannot be a school where teachers, okay, I lost it. Go back up, Dr. Revis.
I can't go back up. I
Okay,
can't see the chat.
I got it.
Okay.
I got it. Katie says we must gather engagement data because we cannot be a school where teachers teach by feeling. Thinking you're effective and knowing you're effective are two very different things. I like that. I like that a lot. Nicole, it provides holistic view of school performance beyond test scores. Another, it provides holistic view of school. That's it. To understand if students are engaged with the learning or just being complacent and following what they think teachers want them to do. Engagement is the foundation of learning. If students are not connected, they won't learn. Maslow before Bloom. And then I'm going to come on down. Data provides insight into the engagement of students and the impactfulness of learning. A lot of them, there's a common thread there, Dr. Revis. Engagement is needed to show outcome and productivity. Provides insight beyond test scores. I like that. And all of them are good. I'm just kind of scanning through to make informed and better decisions to improve instruction. This will enhance student success.
Okay, good deal. Now we know we have three types of engagement data that this chapter covered: behavioral, cognitive, and emotional. So let's first look at behavioral engagement. Why would you, a school leader, be interested in collecting behavioral engagement data? Raise your hand if you want to contribute to that question.
Okay, come on, we got a lot of smart people there.
Why would a school, okay,
Okay,
Kara?
Kara.
Um, I mean, looking at it from like a classroom teacher perspective, students that are disruptive affect the entire learning environment and ability of the other students. So then trying to collect the engagement data, you'd start to look at the root causes and figure out why it's occurring, when it's occurring, and how to solve it.
Okay.
That's
So
good.
secondly, what are limitations to this type of data collection? What are our limitations in collecting behavioral engagement data? There were a lot of examples in the book about this. Anybody want to share?
Hey, Gwen.
Well, the limitation with that is we can see and a student appears to be listening or paying attention, but we don't know really what's going on in their minds.
Correct. I mean, we can tell if, they're misbehaving, but we really don't know, like you say, are they really engaging in their mind? Very good, Gwen. All right. And what are the barriers to this type of data collection? You're a principal, school leader. What are barriers to collecting this type of data? Can't say time because we know it's always a time issue. Anybody?
If administrators are collecting this data when they go in classrooms, sometimes it can be performative when students know, the administrator is going to be there. Sometimes it's not the norm in classrooms.
Okay. Would your teachers need to be comfortable with you collecting this type of data first before you started doing that?
I would think it depends on your school culture, like making it a norm, can help teachers feel more comfortable and knowing that it's not like a gotcha kind of thing, but you are monitoring to give them feedback so that they can improve their instruction or practices.
Right. And help them understand when the lessons start to kind of lag and more students are off task. Let me tell you what, time and true, time on task. If you have high time on task, that's number one thing you need to work on in your classrooms.
Mm.
And I will tell you this, where we have wasted time on task more than anywhere in K-12 is elementary school.
Mhm.
It takes you 30 minutes to go to the bathroom. Then we have to do snack. And then we have to do I mean, I see so much wasted time in elementary classrooms. Now I'm being harsh. I wouldn't dare go in as a school leader and say that, but I would be looking at that, all the transitions that there are in an elementary classroom. So anyway,
Well, and then packing up to go home 15 or 20 minutes before it's time.
and another thing that was a pet peeve of mine when I was actively working in the district was, and this is not just exclusive to elementary schools. At the beginning of the school year, it's like teachers don't trust that children have mastered anything up until the day they walk in their classrooms. So they start reteaching last year's standards. You can't. You know what happens when you start teaching last year's standards? You're never going to get to your grade level standards. So just a thought there on that. But anyway, I get on a tangent. I'm sorry. Let's look at cognitive engagement. Why would a school leader be interested in collecting cognitive engagement? Anybody? Look back at your text.
It's a chance for teachers to see who is authentically engaged in the assignment, if the students are actually doing what the teacher has asked them to do in an activity. It also helps to see who's not engaged and who is just being compliant during a lesson.
Okay, very good. And when you go in as a school leader into your classrooms, you always want to look at the assignment or task that the teacher is having the students do, because you want to see, well, what level of cognitive engagement is being required in that task. Is it just, um, knowledge and comprehension, or is the teacher getting those students to thinking in the application, analysis, and synthesis dimensions of learning, if you will? So, limitations to that type of data. Hannah, can you add on to limitations to gathering that kind of data?
Yes, it would be that, you walk in and they could be doing a different activity than was already planned, or maybe the teacher had a scaffold because they weren't quite ready for it. It could be that the lesson just was not giving the students the opportunity to use those higher order thinking skills. So it might not be exactly what you're looking for when you walk into a classroom.
Okay. And of course, barriers to collecting cognitive engagement. Again, I think your teachers have to be comfortable with that kind of data collection. And more than that, I think teachers have to feel comfortable with a lot of practice with looking at an assignment or a task and understanding themselves. Well, what level of thinking is this task or this question really asking of students? Because I think a lot of times we think that some of our students can't think higher levels, but they can. May have to do what Hannah said, scaffold a little bit. And let's move on to the last one so we're not taking up too much time. Let's talk about emotional engagement. Why would a school leader be interested in collecting emotional engagement?
Emotional engagement, students are more proactive and willing to learn if they feel secure and safe in their environment with their teacher. If the teacher's provided a culture where they can feel safe in their environment and heard and respected, then they're more proactive and ready to learn.
And I think this particular type of engagement is, first of all, emotional is hard to define what we're really looking for. And a lot of the ways that you would collect that data would be self-reporting data, where you're actually asking students to, stop and write down and reflect where they are at a particular time and point in the class. And I know now with so much, or it could be an interview, or it could be, a survey. But schools and school districts now are very skittish about doing anything like that with students. Now with the parents' rights, we're just a little afraid to do that. So I think the limitations, first of all, if it's self-reported data, you don't know how accurate that is. And we all want to self-report the good side of ourselves. So it's just a little difficult, I think, to really collect emotional engagement.
And I'd like to also add that some students don't know how to gauge their emotions or what emotions they're feeling. I know zones of regulation are often taught in terms of figuring out how they feel, but not all students are going to be able to put into words how they feel because they can't describe how they're feeling in terms of what
Yeah,
emotion they're
exactly,
feeling.
Nicole. Particularly in the younger classes, I think, in younger grades. All right, as a school leader, what is your overall takeaway from this chapter? Let's hit the chat box on this one, please. Your overall takeaway from this chapter.
Data isn't just a test score. Can you see it, Dr. Revis, now?
I can, yes.
Okay. Okay.
Have you ever, well, you probably have not. Maybe you are if you're a practicing leader. Have you ever been in a teacher's classroom and you thought, wow, they've got it going on? And the kids look engaged and there's high time on task. But then at the end of the semester or the end of the school year, the test scores are just not there. And so I think that's when you have to start looking deeply at these types of data.
Hmm. Lots of good stuff, Dr. Revis, coming out.
Yeah, I like Hannah. Engagement stands at the very heart of a meaningful life. Yes. Part of productivity. Yes. And I've often said when we dumb down things for our students, like for our students with disabilities or our limited English proficient students, make no mistake, they know we're dumbing it down. And so, that again does not build confidence for children. We don't need to be dumbing things down. We need to be scaffolding so they can access the types of tasks and activities we're asking them to do in the classroom. All right, great. Great job. So, guys, we're not going to require that you do any engagement data collection. You certainly can, but I think before I would ask that you do that, that you really talk with your principal and you look at an instrument that he is comfortable with or she is comfortable with, because I do think it's important data. But for this class, you're not going to have to really do that. But it would be something, I agree, to maybe interesting to talk to your school leader about doing, depending on where they are
Right.
in their journey.
With the assessment that you have to do in CPPA, you cannot interview students because without it going through a process and approval. There's documents that would have to be signed and all of that. So that is one of the reasons why we did not go in that direction, because of all the complexities behind, doing that with students. So.
All right, so let's go back to the agenda. You want to share that, or you want me to, Dr. Stedman?
Remember, go ahead in case we need to open up something, because two of the
Okay.
things won't open up with me.
All right. Can you see the agenda?
Yes.
Okay. So let's talk just very briefly about your assignment for identifying gaps. Guys, I thought the assignment was really well done.
It was.
Very few people had to make any revisions. Again, it was very duplicative to the assignment 3, and I think everybody remembered to also include the alignment to your school and district goals and working on that hypothesis a little bit more.
Dr.
Now,
Revis, can I say one thing about it? I don't know which
sure.
one it was. I had a couple of students, but one that was very distinctly, she indicated that in assignment 4, that when she did her original hypotheses, that after assignment 4 and having gone through the additional the interviews and done all the extra stuff that they had to do, she said it changed things after she talked with teachers and had her focus groups, that the hypothesis, what they thought, actually was different after all of that was done. So we indicated that it was a moving target and that it could change, and that was just indicative of the fact that it does change. So
And as you collect more data, it will change.
it will, yes.
And as you start on this assignment 5, where you're doing research, it should change some as well. Okay, but good job. One of the things I will say, a few of you go back and look at your recommendations right now. If you don't have anything in there that you're going to change instructionally, it will not pass. It will not pass our class, nor will it pass NCPPA. It can't be just about a schedule change or parent engagement or involvement or attendance. We're going to address attendance. There have to be a change in instructional strategies, something that you haven't emphasized before. And so, I'm picking on teachers. I just tell you like it is. We want to change everybody else, but we don't want to change what we're doing. And I'm a teacher at heart. I'll say the same thing. I don't like changing this stuff we're doing now. But we have to make some changes as to what we're doing in the classroom before the outcomes are going to change significantly. So, last week we talked about writing your literature review, and I went to the Dover Library and told you to try to do some work in Dover Library so you could become comfortable with how to do a search. Does anybody need me to go try to do a search at this point? Or are you all good?
Always good.
Okay, good. You're going to search key terms and you're looking for research-based practices to address the learning of your identified student group in your academic area, if you can find it. Now, it may be a little tough, but just keep working and keep searching. You can also, I'm going to go out on a limb and say this, Dr. Stedman, you can also search Google Scholar about strategies, high impact strategies for limited language learners or high impact strategies for students with disabilities. And that will help you, that should lead you to some more literature. You have to have at least 10 unique resources. Okay, Dr. Stedman?
Right. Stop sharing, Dr. Revis, and I'm going to pull something up.
Okay.
What you will find over the next 2 weeks, for this week and next week, we brought attention to this last week, but it's talking about a theory of action. Remember when you started this process 6 weeks ago, or 7 weeks ago, when you started this process, remember we talked about the data. We said you know we wanted you to dig and find every available data that you could in your school that would impact student achievement. You did all of that, you put it out on the table, and you took the time to start digging through it and understanding what the data was, what it was saying. And all of that led you, it led you to the point where you eventually determined a priority academic area, and then you looked at the subgroup that was most impacted by that priority academic area. And then from that, you developed your hypotheses, and you said if and then, based on that. And you've seen how that has, some of it has stayed constant, but some of it has emerged, as you've continued doing your work. So that's where you are. You've identified the problem. You've said, if we did this, then this possibly could happen. Now we've got 10 minutes, Dr. Revis. You're trying to put, look, what does the research say about that now? What are the best practices out there? You're looking for research and evidence-based solutions to your problem. And then once you do, and that's what a theory of action actually does. A theory of action in education is a strategic framework that outlines how specific actions will lead to desired educational outcomes. With that hypothesis, that you said that this is our desired educational outcome. It serves as a roadmap for school improvement. And all of you should have read all of this already. There was an article, and then there was some other information. In summary, what it's saying is a theory of action is a vital tool in education that helps schools and districts strategically plan and implement changes aimed at improving student learning and overall educational effectiveness. It emphasizes the importance of intentionality evidence-based practices, and continuous reflection in the pursuit of educational excellence. And that's where you are now. Having a clear theory of action can help education leaders ensure that the work they're doing successfully meets the needs of the school community. So what you're doing your research now, and the research is eventually going to lead you to putting a plan of action together based on the research, based on all that you've done up to this point. But the plan of action is actually, this is what we can do to help eliminate or improve the problem, that the priority need that has been identified. You're going to test your hypotheses. You're going to put wings on it. You've got, it becomes a living, breathing, working document that you should revisit often. Because if you don't, then it becomes like those books that stay on the shelf and get dust on them. But all of the research that you're doing now will lead to the next step when you have to put it all together to decide, okay, now, these are the best practices. This is what it says we can do to help cure the problem, help the problem, whatever you want to say it can do. But then you're going to put a plan in place to say, this is what we're going to do. You're going to put wings on everything that you're saying, and you're going to make it come alive, and you've got to work the plan that you put in place. This is where you've got to work with your school, your leadership, the school, because there has to be buy-in to make all of this happen, and that becomes a part of your leadership as you're moving forward. Again, you're searching for the real problem. One of the most common mistakes well-meaning leaders make when crafting a theory of action is to assume they know what the problem and solutions are from the start. How many of you, when you started, you said, "Oh, I already know what group is our lowest performing group"? But you were fooled, because it's when you did the work. Some of you said this. You were surprised because it actually was not that group of students. And you say, "I already know what the most the pressing need in my school is, what the biggest need is." But when you started looking at the test data, guess what? It wasn't. You can't assume these things. You've got to test it, and you've got to do this process in order to be able to effectively do what needs to be done to move the pendulum and lead towards overall student success. So, Dr. Revis, that is in a nutshell pretty much what a theory of action is.
Great. And in our next assignment 6, you're actually going to do more of a formalized plan.
Right.
But let me just remind you, a leader review, if I could share one more time, I want to look at the helpful hints document. Well, come on. Here we go. Assignment 6 research. Again, just giving a little brief introduction about what content area and what student group. And you see how it's written. It's a narrative. And you have authors supporting what you're finding in the literature about your problem, your academic area of need, or your student group. And so you're going to have at least 10 resources, distinctly different resources. And then you'll have a summary. And then you will start looking at, you will state your theory of action. This is still not your last chance at this. But again, you've got to have something in there. Mine talks about the GLAD professional development. Really, what I should be saying at this point would be the GLAD instructional strategies from that professional development. And then you're going to have a reference page. Don't forget how to do your references. Everything is double spaced and a hanging indent, and of course, they're alphabetical. So, any questions on what is expected, and you know your theory of action, Dr. Stedman went through and talked about that, and kind of hopefully now this hypothesis is morphing into your theory of action. Any
Okay,
questions?
okay, Amanda?
Are all of the literature that we look at, is it needing to be all peer reviewed?
Does it need to be one? Excuse me?
Does it need to be peer reviewed?
I would like it to be, yes. I would like it to be. What do you think,
Yeah,
Dr. Stewart?
yeah, I think so too, yeah.
Yeah. Now, if you're using Google Scholar, you may not know if it's peer review. I only think you need to look at Google Scholar if you're not getting enough hits on the Gardner-Webb website, library. And Google Scholar could give you some key search terms.
Right.
And you're not going to find, I don't think, you're not going to find Project GLAD, for example, listed in, I don't think you will, in the Gardner-Webb, your Gardner-Webb search. You just won't, because it is a program. But you would find it in a Google Scholar search.
Okay.
You might,
Gwen?
I don't know.
Okay, Gwen's got a question. Dr. Evans, I think we're going to soon be cut off.
Okay.
Are
Go ahead,
we
Gwen.
limited to the Dover Library, or can we use a local college library if we have resources at home?
Yeah. Yeah. You can use whatever means you want, but just, make sure that, number one, if they're peer reviewed, that's where you want to stay if you can. Okay. All right,
Pay
guys.
close attention to, when you're looking at stuff, look at the seminal researchers, where did this all begin? Because, that's the foundation of a lot of things. So I would encourage you to look at that, Marzano or Whitaker. I mean, just using those names, those are important names out there. So whatever you're doing, just look at who were the seminal researchers in that. And they will lead you many times to other resources.
So this is a lot of research and a lot of writing. And you've got into October the 12th. You got 12 whole days to do it, right?
Right.
You're going to be fine.
You will be fine.
Yeah. In previous semesters, they've had a week.
Right.
And I'm so glad that we're able to slow down. It was crazy.
Right. Yeah, it was. But class, again, thank you so much for working with us. We don't like some of the things we're having to